They mocked the frayed jacket before they saw the ghost unit patch beneath the dust. In a military supply depot where rank meant everything, a woman in worn fatigues became the morning's joke, until a brigadier general froze mid-stride, his face draining of color as he read the faded insignia on her shoulder. What happened next shattered assumptions and exposed a truth no one in that room was prepared to face. Some legacies don't announce themselves. They wait. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and follow along to the very end. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Now, let's dive in. The fluorescent lights inside Redstone Supply Facility buzzed with the same tired frequency they had for 20 years. Constant, indifferent, washing everything in that particular shade of institutional white that made shadows look gray and people look sick. It was 0847 hours on a Monday morning in late September, and the depot was already drowning in its own controlled chaos. Forklifts beeped in reversed harmony. Boots scraped concrete. Radio chatter bled through wall-mounted speakers in bursts of static and clipped military shorthand. The air smelled like diesel exhaust, burnt coffee, and the kind of sweat that came from moving heavy equipment in a building with broken air conditioning. Fort Calder Ridge sat deep in the high desert of New Mexico, a sprawling military installation that had outlived 3 wars and countless budget cuts. Redstone Supply was its beating heart, or maybe its stomach. Everything flowed through here. Ammunition, rations, medical supplies, boots, body armor, the unglamorous machinery of military logistics handled by people who didn't expect glory and rarely got gratitude. Mara Velasquez stepped through the heavy double doors at 0849, letting them swing shut behind her with a pneumatic hiss. She moved like someone who'd learned long ago that hurrying only wore you down. Her stride was measured, deliberate, the kind of economy of motion that came from years of knowing exactly how much energy a day might demand. She was in her early 50s, though the lines around her eyes suggested she'd lived more decades than the calendar claimed. Her hair, dark brown streaked with gray, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry except a simple watch with a cracked crystal. And the uniform. It wasn't regulation, not anymore. The jacket was desert tan, faded to something closer to beige, the fabric worn soft at the elbows and along the collar. The pants were similarly weathered, creased in all the wrong places, the cargo pockets sagging slightly as if they'd carried too many things for too many miles. The boots were scuffed but clean, broken in to the point of comfort, the kind you didn't replace because you'd never find another pair that fit quite right. But it was the shoulder patch that told the real story, or would have, if anyone had looked closely enough. It was barely visible. Faded almost to nothing. The colors had bled out years ago, leaving only the ghost of an outline, a shape that might have been a unit insignia once but now looked like a scar on the fabric. Mara didn't notice the stairs at first. She was focused on the task. Hydration rig, replacement boots, maybe a new belt if they had her size. Simple logistics. In and out. She had a civilian consulting contract that started in 3 days, and she needed gear that wouldn't fall apart halfway through. The counter was across the depot floor, past rows of industrial shelving stacked with green canvas bags and plastic crates labeled with alphanumeric codes. A handful of soldiers milled around, most of them young, early 20s, moving with that particular blend of boredom and self-importance that came with stateside duty. 3 junior officers stood near a coffee station that looked like it had been salvaged from a condemned gas station. 2 second lieutenants and a first lieutenant, all fresh enough that their uniforms still had creases from the package. The first one to notice her was Lieutenant Brennan, a kid from Ohio with a buzz cut so fresh you could still see the razor lines. He was mid-sip on something that barely qualified as coffee when his eyes landed on Mara. He smirked. It started there. "Check it out," he muttered to the officer next to him, a thin guy named Voss with a narrow face and the kind of mustache that looked like it was still making up its mind. "Costume party start early?" Voss snorted. "Jesus, where'd she dig that up? Salvation Army?" The third officer, Lieutenant Chen, was quieter, but she smiled anyway. The kind of smile people wear when they don't want to be left out. Mara heard none of it. She reached the counter, where a young private sat behind a desktop computer that looked like it had survived Y2K by sheer stubbornness. His name tape read, Holloway. He couldn't have been more than 19, face still soft, eyes too wide for someone who'd seen anything worse than a training exercise. "Morning," Mara said evenly. "I need to requisition field gear. Civilian contractor. Authorized through Calder Logistics Division." Holloway blinked. Yeah. Okay, you got your authorization code?" She pulled a folded paper from her jacket pocket, smoothed it flat on the counter. Holloway squinted at it, then started typing with 2 fingers, his face bunched in concentration. Behind her, the jokes were getting louder. "Think she's LARPing?" Brennan's voice carried. "Like medieval fair, but make it military?" Voss laughed. "Bro, that jacket's older than you are." "Probably smells like it too." Holloway's fingers froze on the keyboard. His eyes flicked up to Mara, then past her, then back to the screen. Uncertainty rippled across his face. Ma'am? It's saying I need manual approval for this." Mara's expression didn't change. "From who?" "Supply officer, or someone with higher clearance." "How long does that take?" I'm not sure. I can try to... Hey!" The voice came from behind her. Lieutenant Brennan stepped closer, hands on his hips, chest puffed just enough to signal authority he didn't actually have. He was grinning, but it wasn't friendly. "You know this is a military depot, right? Not a thrift store." Mara turned slowly, looked at him without blinking. Didn't say a word. Brennan's grin faltered, just a flicker, but he pushed through it. "I mean, no disrespect, but where'd you even get that uniform? It looks like it survived Desert Storm." "Maybe she did," Voss added, stepping up beside him. "Stolen valor's a real thing, you know." The air in the room shifted. Other soldiers glanced over. A couple of enlisted personnel near the shelving slowed their work, ears tuning in. Mara's face remained perfectly neutral. "I have authorization," she said quietly. "The paperwork's valid." "Anyone can fake documents," Brennan said, louder now, playing to the room. "Happens all the time. People show up, claim they're veterans, try to get free gear." He crossed his arms. "I'm just saying, maybe we should verify this before we hand over equipment." Holloway looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Sir, I'm just following the system. I know, Private, you're doing fine." Brennan's tone softened toward him, hardened toward Mara. "But protocol exists for a reason." Mara didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She didn't raise her voice or demand respect or pull out a phone to call someone who could confirm her credentials. She just stepped aside. Slowly, calmly, she walked to a metal bench against the far wall and sat down. The bench was cold even through her jacket. The air conditioning vent above it rattled, blowing recycled air that smelled faintly of mildew. She folded her hands in her lap and stared straight ahead, expression unreadable. The laughter behind her grew. "She's really just going to sit there? Guess the jig's up." "Probably waiting for us to forget about her." Mara's jaw tightened, just a fraction, barely visible. An old ache pulsed in her left shoulder, deep in the joint where scar tissue had replaced muscle. It flared when the weather changed, or when she stayed still too long, or when the air conditioning hit it just right. She rolled her shoulder once, a small movement, almost unconscious. The jacket shifted. Just enough. The patch on her shoulder, the faded, nearly invisible insignia, rotated into a sliver of light from the overhead fluorescent. For half a second, the outline became clearer. Not much. Just enough. A civilian contractor walking past with a clipboard froze mid-step. His name was Garrett. Mid-40s, gray beard, eyes that had seen things most people in the depot never would. He'd worked logistics for 15 years. Army before that, 2 deployments, one he didn't talk about. He stared at Mara's shoulder. His breath caught. His eyes went wide. Not in amusement, not in curiosity. In recognition. He took a step closer, squinting, trying to make sure he wasn't seeing things. The outline was faint, almost gone, but the shape was unmistakable if you knew what to look for. A dagger. Crossed with lightning. Wrapped in barbed wire. Echo 519. Garrett's clipboard slipped from his hand, clattering on the concrete. He didn't pick it up. He turned on his heel and walked, fast, faster than his job ever required, toward the back offices, his boots echoing across the depot. Mara didn't react. She sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes forward. She was used to waiting. The minutes crawled. Brennan and Voss had moved on to other jokes, their attention drifting. Holloway was still typing, occasionally glancing at Mara with something like guilt. The depot hummed with its usual noise, beeps, clangs, radio static, voices blending into white noise. Then the laughter stopped. Not slowly, all at once. Footsteps approached from behind. Heavy, steady, unhurried. The kind of footsteps that didn't need to announce themselves because the weight they carried did it for them. Mara's spine straightened reflexively. Muscle memory. A response coded so deep it bypassed thought. A shadow fell across her shoulders, broad and unmoving. The voice, when it came, was quiet, but it carried weight, the kind that silenced rooms without trying. That patch. Pause. Where did you serve with Echo 519? The depot went dead silent. No forklifts, no chatter, no radio static, just the faint hum of fluorescent lights and the barely audible sound of a man's breathing behind her. Mara's heart rate didn't spike. Her hands didn't tremble. She'd lived through moments far more dangerous than this, but something in her chest tightened anyway. Recognition, maybe, or the weight of being seen. She stood slowly, turned. The man in front of her was in his late 50s, graying at the temples, eyes sharp and clear despite the years. His uniform was crisp, the kind of crisp that came from discipline, not vanity. Stars gleamed on his collar. Brigadier General Aaron Klein. He wasn't looking at her face, he was looking at her shoulder. Mara's voice came out steady. Black Dune, she said. Then Crimson Ridge. Klein's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to hers, searching, confirming. When? 2006 to 2013. The silence stretched. Klein's gaze didn't waver. That unit wasn't supposed to exist. Mara met his eyes. It did. For 7 years. Air seemed to compress. The depot felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer, the ceiling lower. Klein's expression shifted. Not surprise, not disbelief. Something heavier, respect, and something else. Grief, maybe. Or anger at what had been forgotten. He turned sharply, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Who's the officer in charge of this depot? Brennan stepped forward, suddenly smaller. Sir, not you. Klein's tone was flat, final. The OIC, now. A captain emerged from a side office, face pale, moving fast. Sir, Captain Riggs, supply officer. Klein didn't waste time. He pointed at Mara. This woman served with Echo 519, covert logistics and direct action, 7-year deployment cycle, Black Dune, Crimson Ridge. You want to know what that means? Riggs swallowed. Sir, it means, Klein continued, voice low and hard, that she pulled security on convoys that didn't exist, in places we couldn't admit we were, under fire from enemies we couldn't name. It means she saved lives while people back here were drinking coffee and filling out spreadsheets. He let that sink in. And you let your junior officers mock her. The room was a tomb. Klein turned back to Mara. What do you need? Boots, she said quietly. Hydration rig. Private Holloway. Holloway nearly jumped out of his skin. Yes, sir. Approve her requisition, immediately. Anything she needs. No delays, no paperwork. Clear? Yes, sir. Klein looked at Brennan. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Brennan's face was red. His hands shook slightly. Ma'am, I apologize. I didn't... Mara looked at him once. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. You didn't ask. No anger, no lecture. Just truth. She turned back to the counter. Holloway was already moving, fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling inventory with frantic efficiency. Within 2 minutes, boots and a hydration pack were on the counter. Mara picked them up, tested the weight, nodded once. Thank you. She walked toward the exit. Klein fell into step beside her without a word. The depot slowly restarted, machines humming, voices returning, but the atmosphere had shifted. Something invisible had been corrected. Outside, the heat hit like a wall. Sunlight shimmered off asphalt. The air tasted like dust and sage. Mara walked toward a battered Ford pickup parked near the fence line, new gear balanced easily in her hands. Klein walked beside her in silence, boots crunching gravel in sync. No ceremony, no praise, just shared understanding. At her truck, he paused. "We're running a training exercise in November," he said. "Tactical logistics under hostile conditions. Could use someone who's actually done it." Mara considered it, adjusting the strap on her bag. She glanced back once, toward the building where assumptions had collapsed under truth. "Maybe," she said. Klein nodded. That was enough. She climbed into the truck, started the engine. Coughed once, then settled into a rough idle. As she pulled away, Klein stood in the parking lot, watching until she disappeared down the access road. Inside the depot, Brennan sat on the same metal bench Mara had occupied. His hands were still shaking. Voss stood nearby, silent for once. Chen had left without a word. Holloway leaned over the counter. "You okay, sir?" Brennan didn't answer. On the bench beside him, forgotten, was a small piece of paper. A printed copy of Mara's authorization form. At the bottom, in small text, was a line most people never read. Velasquez, M. Echo 519/Tier 2. Logistics and Direct Action/Classified Theater /2006 to 2013/Honorable Discharge. Holloway picked it up, read it, set it down. He didn't say anything. Some stories aren't meant to be loud. They're meant to be remembered. The truck's engine ticked as it cooled in the parking lot of a roadside diner 30 miles south of Fort Calder Ridge. Mara sat in the cab with the windows down, letting the dry desert air wash through. The gear from Redstone sat in the passenger seat, boots still in the box, hydration rig draped over the headrest. She hadn't touched either since leaving the base. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, still. The watch on her left wrist showed 1,047 hours. She'd been sitting here for 20 minutes, staring at nothing in particular, letting the adrenaline drain out of her system the way she'd learned 2 years ago. You didn't fight it, you let it pass through like water. The diner behind her was called Rosie's, though there was no indication Rosie had ever existed. Faded pink neon, cracked asphalt, a handwritten sign in the window advertising coffee and pie. A few semis idled in the back lot, drivers catching sleep between hauls. Mara's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. A text from an unknown number. "This is Klein. Got your contact from your authorization file. Wanted to make sure you made it out okay." She stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back with her thumb. "I'm fine. Thank you." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "What happened back there shouldn't have happened. I've addressed it." Mara didn't respond immediately. She looked out at the highway, where heat mirages turned the asphalt into liquid shimmer. A memory surfaced. Black Dune, 2009. The horizon doing the same thing while they waited for extraction that never came on time. She typed, "It's not the first time. Won't be the last." Klein's response came faster this time. "Doesn't make it right." She almost smiled. Almost. "No, it doesn't." Another pause, then, "November exercise is real. If you're interested, I'll send details." Mara's thumb hovered over the keyboard. She thought about the depot, about Brennan's face when he realized what he'd done, about Holloway's hands shaking as he processed her gear, about how easily people forgot. "Send them. I'll think about it." "Good. Take care, Velasquez." She pocketed the phone and climbed out of the truck. The diner's interior was exactly what it looked like from outside. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, a counter with spinning stools, a jukebox in the corner that probably hadn't worked since the 90s. The air smelled like grease and burnt coffee, which somehow felt more honest than the recycled air at Redstone. A waitress in her 60s looked up from behind the counter. Name tag said Linda. "Sit anywhere, hun." Mara chose a booth near the window, the kind where you could see the door and the parking lot without turning your head. Old habits. Linda brought a menu and a coffee pot. "Coffee?" "Please." The cup was chipped but clean. The coffee was terrible. Mara drank it anyway. "You know what you want? Or you need a minute?" "Eggs, scrambled, toast, whatever's easiest." Linda scribbled on her pad. "You got it." She started to turn, then paused. Her eyes lingered on Mara's jacket, hanging open now, the faded patch just visible. You military? Was. Linda nodded slowly, something shifting in her expression. My son was Army, Iraq, 2004. He make it back? Yeah. Different than when he left, but yeah. She refilled Mara's cup without asking. You? Different too. Linda smiled, sad, knowing. Aren't we all? She walked back toward the kitchen, calling the order through a window. Mara drank her coffee and watched the highway. A state trooper cruised past, lights off. A family in a minivan pulled into the gas station across the road, kids spilling out like puppies. Normal life. The kind that kept moving whether you were part of it or not. Her phone buzzed again. Different number this time. She didn't recognize it. Ms. Velasquez? This is Captain Riggs from Redstone Supply. I wanted to reach out personally to apologize for what occurred this morning. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility for the conduct of my personnel. Mara set the phone down without responding. It buzzed again. I've initiated counseling for the officers involved and reviewed our authorization protocols. If there's anything else I can do to make this right, please let me know. She picked up the phone, typed, It's handled. Thank you. She didn't mention that handled meant she'd walked away with her dignity intact and nothing more. Didn't mention that apologies after the fact were easy. Didn't mention that the real problem wasn't protocol, it was assumption. The food arrived. Linda set it down with a knowing look. Eat up, hun. Looks like you need it. Mara did. The eggs were overcooked, the toast was cold, and it was exactly what she needed. She was halfway through when the door opened and 3 men walked in. They weren't loud, weren't drunk, but something about the way they moved set off alarms in Mara's head. They scanned the room before choosing seats, not casually, deliberately. 2 of them wore baseball caps pulled low. The third had a jacket too heavy for the weather. They sat at the counter, ordered coffee, didn't talk much. Mara kept eating, eyes on her plate, awareness on them. Linda brought their coffee, made small talk they didn't return. She walked back to the kitchen and Mara saw the slight tension in her shoulders. One of the men glanced over. His eyes landed on Mara, then her jacket, then away. She kept eating. 5 minutes passed. The men drank their coffee in silence. One of them checked his phone. Another drummed his fingers on the counter, irregular rhythm, nervous energy. Then the one in the heavy jacket stood, walked toward the restroom in the back. The other 2 stayed at the counter. Mara set down her fork, picked up her coffee, took a sip. The man came back from the restroom, stopped at Mara's booth. Excuse me, he said, voice flat, practiced. That's a military jacket, right? Mara looked up. It is. You serve? I did. He nodded slowly. My brother's army, Fort Hood. You ever stationed there? No. Where'd you serve? Mara's expression didn't change. Couple places? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Couple places. That's specific. He glanced back at his friends. We're just curious, you know. My brother talks about his unit all the time, loves telling stories. Good for him. Yeah. The man's smile faded. You don't talk much, huh? Not about that. Why not? Stolen valor thing? People pretending they served when they didn't? The diner went quiet. Linda was watching from behind the counter, her hand near the phone. Mara set down her coffee slowly. I served. I don't owe you my service record. The man leaned against the booth, casual but deliberate. See? That's what someone trying to hide something would say. One of his friends stood from the counter. The third stayed seated but turned to watch. Mara's heartbeat stayed steady. Her hand stayed visible. I'm just trying to eat my breakfast. And we're just asking questions, the man said. No harm in that, right? Linda stepped out from behind the counter. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to leave her alone. The man at the booth didn't look at her. We're just talking, ma'am. Having a conversation. Doesn't look like she wants one. She can speak for herself. Mara met his eyes. I'd like to finish my meal. Alone. The man straightened, hands spreading in mock surrender. Hey, no problem. Just making conversation. He started to turn, then paused. My brother says there's a lot of fake veterans out there. People wearing uniforms they didn't earn. Makes him real angry. I'm sure it does. Yeah, makes me angry too. He walked back to the counter, sat down. The three men huddled together, voices low. Linda came to Mara's booth, refilled her coffee without asking. You okay, hun? Fine. You want me to call someone? No, thank you. Linda hesitated, then nodded and walked away. Mara finished her eggs, the toast, drained the coffee. She pulled a $10 bill from her wallet and left it on the table, more than the meal cost. She stood, picked up her jacket, and walked toward the door. The three men watched her go. Didn't say anything. Didn't move. Outside, the heat was like walking into a wall. Mara crossed the parking lot to her truck, gear still in the passenger seat, keys in her hand. She unlocked the door. Behind her, the diner's door opened. The three men stepped out, spread out slightly. Not blocking her in, not yet, but positioned, tactical, deliberate. The one in the heavy jacket spoke. Hold up a second. Mara turned slowly. Something I can help you with? We've been talking, he said, and we think you're full of shit. The other two fanned out, flanking. Mara didn't move. That's your opinion? No, the man said, stepping closer. It's a fact. You look like someone playing dress-up, stolen valor, disrespecting people who actually served. I did serve. Prove it. I don't have to. See, that's the problem. You can't. He was 5 feet away now, close enough that Mara could see the tattoo on his forearm, amateur ink blurred at the edges. Real veterans don't hide. They're proud. Mara's voice stayed calm. Some of us just want to be left alone. And some of us don't let fakes walk around pretending to be something they're not. One of the others, the younger one with the baseball cap, shifted his weight. His hand drifted toward his waistband. Not a weapon, probably, but the motion was there. Mara saw it, cataloged it, didn't react. The leader stepped closer. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to admit your line, apologize, and take off that jacket. No. No? No. His jaw tightened. You think you're tough? I think, Mara interrupted quietly, that you're making assumptions based on nothing, and I think you should walk away before this gets stupid. The man's face went red. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? Someone who doesn't know when to stop. He moved fast, or thought he did, reached for her jacket, probably planning to grab it, make a show. Mara sidestepped, smooth, minimal. His hand caught air. He stumbled, off balance, and turned back toward her, anger flaring. You don't. Mara's voice was steel now, not loud, not aggressive, just absolute. Walk away. The younger one took a step forward. Mara shifted her stance, subtle, almost invisible. Weight on the balls of her feet, hands loose, ready. The leader saw it. Something in his brain finally caught up. Hesitation flickered across his face. Behind them, the diner door opened again. Linda stood there with a phone in her hand. Sheriff's on his way. Dispatch said 3 minutes. The leader glanced back at her, then at Mara. Calculation ran behind his eyes. Pride versus consequence. He stepped back. This isn't over. Yeah, Mara said quietly. It is. The 3 men backed toward a dusty Chevy pickup parked near the road. Climbed in. The engine roared to life, too loud, compensating. They pulled out onto the highway and disappeared. Mara exhaled slowly. The tension in her shoulders released incrementally. Linda walked over, phone still in hand. You really okay? Yeah. Sheriff's actually coming. I did call. Good. You want to wait? Give a statement? Mara looked at the highway, then back at Linda. I don't think that's necessary. Linda studied her for a moment. You handled that real calm. Practice. What kind of practice? Mara almost smiled. The kind you don't talk about. Linda nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured. She hesitated. My son's the same way. Won't talk about what happened over there. Just different. We all are. A siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. You should still wait, Linda said. Those guys might come back. They won't. How do you know? Because they're cowards. Cowards pick fights they think they can win. Mara opened her truck door. They just found out they can't. The sheriff's cruiser pulled into the lot, lights flashing. A deputy climbed out, young, maybe 30, hand resting on his belt. Someone called about a disturbance, Linda pointed down the highway. 3 men in a Chevy pickup harassed this woman. Left about 2 minutes ago. The deputy looked at Mara. You want to file a report? No. You sure? If they threatened you, they didn't do anything, just talked. The deputy frowned but didn't push. You get a plate number? No. Description of the men? White, 30s, one had a tattoo on his forearm. They won't be back. The deputy looked like he wanted to ask more, but didn't. All right. Well, if you change your mind, you can call the department. I won't, but thank you. He tipped his hat and walked back to his cruiser, radioing something Mara couldn't hear. Linda touched her arm lightly. You take care, hun. You too. Mara climbed into the truck, started the engine. The deputy watched her pull out of the lot, then followed her to the highway before turning back. She drove south, away from Fort Calder Ridge, away from Rosie's Diner, away from assumptions and confrontations that followed her like dust. The road stretched empty ahead. Heat shimmer turned the asphalt into liquid. The radio was off. Just the sound of the engine and the wind through the open windows. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. Another text from Klein. November 14th to 18th, Fort Lejeune. Tactical logistics under simulated hostile conditions. Full briefing if you're in. Mara set the phone down. Watched the road. Black Dune had been simulated hostile conditions too, right up until it wasn't. She thought about Brennan's face, about the men at the diner, about people who saw a worn uniform and assumed weakness, about what it meant to be invisible until you weren't. The highway curved west toward mountains that looked blue in the distance. The sky was cloudless, endless, the kind of sky that made you feel small and infinite at the same time. Her shoulder ached, the old injury, the one that never quite healed. She rolled it once, twice, muscle memory working through the stiffness. Somewhere behind her, Fort Calder Ridge kept running. Supplies moved. Orders were given. People like Brennan learned lessons they should have known already. Somewhere ahead, November waited with questions she hadn't answered yet. Mara drove. The miles accumulated in silence. And in that silence, she felt something shift. Not large, not dramatic. Just the faintest recognition that the past wasn't as buried as she'd thought. That some ghost didn't need permission to rise. That some stories, no matter how hard you tried to leave them behind, found ways to circle back. She pulled off the highway an hour later, parking in the shade of an overpass where semis sometimes rested. Killed the engine. Let the quiet settle. Her hands rested on the steering wheel again. Still. Steady. She pulled out her phone and opened the text from Klein. Stared at it for a long time, then she typed, "Send the briefing. I'm in." She hit send before she could second-guess it. The response came almost immediately. "Outstanding. You won't regret this." Mara set the phone down and leaned her head back against the seat. She wasn't sure if regret was the right word. But she was sure that standing still was worse than moving forward, even if forward meant revisiting things she'd spent years trying to forget. The desert stretched in all directions, patient and indifferent. Mara closed her eyes and let the heat wash over her. Somewhere in the distance, a semi's air horn blared, long, lonely, echoing off the concrete. She didn't move, just breathed, and waited for whatever came next. The briefing packet arrived 2 days later via encrypted email. 16 pages of operational parameters, terrain maps, and logistics scenarios that read like fiction, but weren't. Mara sat at the small desk in her apartment, a studio on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades, and read through it twice. Fort Lejeune, November 14th to 18th. Simulated convoy operations under contested conditions. Role players acting as hostile forces. Live ammunition prohibited, but everything else fair game. Smoke, blanks, pyrotechnics, psychological pressure. The objective wasn't to win, it was to not break. She recognized the design immediately. This wasn't training, this was vetting. Someone wanted to see who could handle pressure when the rulebook went out the window. Her phone rang. Unknown number, but she answered anyway. Velasquez. It's Klein. His voice was clearer than over text, but still carried that same economical tone. You get the packet? I did. Questions? Several, but I'll save them for the briefing. A pause. Then, good. I'm sending you contact info for Major Reese Torrance. He's running the exercise. Former Ranger, 2 deployments, knows his business. He'll fill you in on the rest. Understood. Mara. Klein's voice shifted, quieter. This isn't going to be easy. The people running this, they're not the ones from Redstone. They're going to push hard. I didn't sign up for easy. I know, just wanted to make sure you knew what you were walking into. I always do. Klein exhaled, almost a laugh, almost relief. I'll see you on the 14th. The line went dead. Mara set the phone down and looked at the packet again. Terrain maps showed dense pine forest, elevation changes, river crossings, the kind of environment where visibility dropped to 10 feet and every shadow could hide something waiting. She'd been in worse, but that was the problem with worse. It had a way of staying with you. She closed the packet and stood. Her apartment was sparse. A bed, a desk, a kitchenette with a coffee maker that worked half the time. No pictures on the walls, no personal effects except a small wooden box on the nightstand that she never opened. She walked to the window. Outside, Albuquerque stretched under a sky going purple with dusk. Traffic hummed. Streetlights flickered on. Normal life moving forward, indifferent. Her reflection stared back from the glass. A woman in her 50s, hair loose now, face lined with years that showed more than time. She looked tired. She was tired. But tired didn't mean done. She pulled her phone back out and typed a message to the contact Klein had sent. Major Torrance, this is Mara Velasquez. General Klein forwarded your info. I'm confirmed for November 14th to 18th. Let me know if you need anything before then. The response came within minutes. Miss Velasquez, good to have you. Briefing is 0600 on the 14th. Come ready to move. This one's going to test everything you've got. Mara stared at the message, typed back, Roger that. She set the phone down and walked to the closet, pulled out a duffel bag she hadn't touched in months, unzipped it. Inside, boots still broken in, a hydration pack newer than the one she'd requisitioned, gloves, fingerless, worn at the palms, a jacket, not the faded one from Redstone, but similar, darker, cleaner. And beneath it all, wrapped in an old t-shirt, a folding knife with a blade that had been sharpened so many times the steel had thinned. She lifted it out, felt the weight, opened it with a flick. Smooth, practiced muscle memory coded into her hand. The blade caught the light from the window. She closed it, set it aside. Then she started packing. Fort Lejeune sat on the coast of North Carolina, sprawling across 156,000 acres of swamp, forest, and training grounds that had turned civilians into Marines for generations. Mara arrived on the morning of November 13th, a day early, driving a rental sedan that smelled like cigarettes and regret. The gate guard checked her ID, made a call, waved her through. She followed signs to the logistics training area, a complex of buildings and staging yards surrounded by chain link and concertina wire. The air was different here, humid, heavy, tasting of salt and pine. The sky was overcast, low clouds promising rain that hadn't fallen yet. She parked near a building marked LTA 7 and climbed out. Grabbed her duffel from the trunk. A man in his early 40s stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching her approach. He was built like someone who'd spent years carrying weight. Broad shoulders, thick forearms, posture that suggested readiness, even standing still. His name tape read Torrance. Velasquez? That's me. He extended a hand. Reese Torrance. Thanks for coming out early. His grip was firm but not performative. She returned it. Wanted to get a feel for the place. Smart. He gestured toward the building. Let's walk. They moved through the entrance into a corridor lined with briefing rooms and offices. The walls were covered with maps, photos, operational diagrams, visual history of training exercises past. Torrance walked with the efficiency of someone who didn't waste motion. Klein spoke highly of you, said you have experience most people don't talk about. Most people don't ask. I'm asking. Mara glanced at him. Echo 519. 2006 to 2013. Logistics and direct action in theaters that officially didn't exist. Torrance nodded slowly. Black Dune? Among others. Jesus. He stopped walking, turned to face her fully. That op's still classified. Most people don't even know it happened. Most people weren't there. And the ones who were don't talk about it. No, Mara said quietly. They don't. Torrance studied her for a moment. Not judgment, evaluation. Then he started walking again. This exercise is designed to break people. Not physically, psychologically. We throw scenarios at them that don't have clean answers. Time pressure, resource scarcity, ethical ambiguity. The goal is to see who keeps their head. And who doesn't. Exactly. He pushed through a door into a large briefing room. Maps covered the walls, topographic, satellite, hand-drawn. A table in the center held miniature terrain models. You're not here as a participant. You're here as a consultant, observer. If things go sideways, you step in. Sideways? How? People panic, people freeze, people make decisions that get simulated convoys wiped out. He pointed to a map showing dense forest. We've got 12 candidates, mixed backgrounds, Army, Marines, private contractors. They think they're being tested on logistics. They're not. What are they being tested on? Leadership under chaos. Adaptability when the plan falls apart. Integrity when no one's watching. He looked at her. Sound familiar? Mara's jaw tightened. Yeah. Good. Because tomorrow morning, we're going to put them through hell. And I need someone who's been there to tell me if they're worth a damn. The candidates arrived at 600 on November 14th. Mara watched from the observation room as they filed into the briefing hall, 12 men and women in their 20s and 30s, a mix of military polish and contractor pragmatism. Some looked confident, some looked nervous. All of them looked like they thought they knew what was coming. They didn't. Torrance stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, expression neutral. Good morning. I'm Major Torrance. For the next 5 days, you belong to me. This exercise is simple. You'll plan and execute a convoy operation through contested territory. You'll face ambushes, equipment failures, and scenarios designed to test your decision-making under pressure. You will fail. The question is how you fail and whether you learn from it. He let that settle. You'll be divided into 3 teams. Each team gets a scenario. You have 6 hours to plan, then we execute. Observers will be present. Performance will be evaluated. Questions? A hand went up. A woman in her early 30s, Marine Corps background written in her posture. What are the rules of engagement? Survive? Adapt? Don't get your people killed? Torrance's expression didn't change. Anything else? No hands. Good. Team assignments are posted outside. You have 30 minutes to gear up. Move. The room emptied in controlled chaos. Mara stood in the observation booth with Torrance and 2 other evaluators, a logistics colonel named Marsh and a civilian contractor named Diaz, who'd spent a decade in private security. Marsh was already shaking his head. Half of them won't make it past day 2. That's the point, Torrance said. Diaz looked at Mara. You really run ops with Echo 519? I did. That unit's a ghost story. Most people think it's bullshit. Most people are wrong. Diaz grinned. I like her. On the monitors, the candidates were suiting up. Body armor, helmets, load-bearing vests. Weapons were training replicas, weighted to match real rifles but firing only blanks. The vehicles were HMMWVs, battered and functional, lined up in the staging yard like patients waiting for surgery. Torrance pointed to the center screen. Team 1, led by Captain Wen, Army Logistics. Smart, by the book, never been shot at for real. That's a problem, Mara said. Yeah, Team 2, Gunnery Sergeant Cross, Marines, combat veteran, Afghanistan. Knows his stuff but tends to freelance. And Team 3? Torrance hesitated. Civilian contractor named Brooke Ashford, former Air Force, intelligence background, sharp as hell but untested under fire. Mara watched the screens. Team 3 was moving with less coordination than the others, hesitation in their movements, uncertainty in their spacing. She's going to struggle, Mara said. Maybe. Or maybe she'll surprise us. Torrance checked his watch. Scenarios launch in 5 hours. Until then, we wait. The first convoy rolled out at 1300 hours. Team 1, led by Captain Nguyen, moved with textbook precision, vehicles spaced correctly, gunners alert, communications tight. They followed the planned route through pine forest, over dirt roads that turned to mud under overcast skies. Mara watched from a trailing vehicle, Torrance beside her. The forest was dense, visibility dropping to 20 feet in places, perfect ambush terrain. How long until contact, she asked. 12 minutes, Nguyen's voice crackled over the radio. All units maintain interval, eyes up. Professional, calm, exactly what you'd expect from someone trained well. And then the world exploded. Smoke grenades detonated on both sides of the road. Blank fire erupted from the tree line, role players in opposing force gear firing at realistic intervals. Pyrotechnics flashed, loud enough to make ears ring. The convoy stopped. Too fast. Bunched up. Nguyen's voice came over the radio, steady but strained. Contact left and right, suppress and push through. The gunners returned fire, blanks, thunder without consequence. But the convoy wasn't moving. Torrance keyed his radio. Team 1, you're stationary in the kill zone. What's your call? Silence. Then, hold on. You don't have hold on. You have now. Nguyen's voice cracked. All vehicles, push forward. Go, go, go. The lead HMMWV lurched forward. The others followed. Too close, spacing collapsed. The opposing force shifted, maintaining pressure, simulating accurate fire. One of the trailing vehicles stalled. Engine coughed, died. Nguyen. Vehicle 3, status. Engines down. We're stuck. Can you restart? Negative. Torrance watched, expression unreadable. On the monitor in his hand, the convoy's formation had disintegrated. Vehicle 3 sat dead in the kill zone. The others had pushed forward but left it behind. Mara leaned forward. He's going to abandon them. Let's see, Nguyen's voice came back. Vehicle 3, we're coming back for you. All units, reverse and provide cover. The convoy tried to reverse. Chaos. Vehicles bumping into each other. Role players closing in, simulating grenades, casualty markers appearing on screens. Torrance keyed the radio. Index exercise concluded. The gunfire stopped. Smoke cleared. The forest went quiet except for the sound of engines idling and people breathing hard. Nguyen climbed out of his vehicle, face pale, hands shaking slightly. Torrance walked over. What happened? We stopped. We should have pushed through. You stopped in a kill zone. In real life, your entire convoy is dead. Nguyen swallowed. Yes, sir. Why'd you go back for Vehicle 3? I couldn't leave them. You could. You should have. 1 vehicle down is better than 5. Torrance's voice was hard, but not cruel. You made an emotional call, not a tactical one. Nguyen looked at the ground. Understood. Mara watched from a distance. The candidates were learning what training couldn't teach, that the right decision and the humane decision weren't always the same. Torrance walked back to her. Team 2 goes in 2 hours. Want to observe from the ground? Yeah. Good. Bring your gear. That. Team 2's scenario was different. Not an ambush, a hostage situation. The convoy had been tasked with transporting a high-value asset through hostile territory. Halfway through, they encountered a roadblock. Role players dressed as civilians, armed, holding a hostage. Another role player, hands bound, gun to his head. Gunnery Sergeant Cross stood in the turret of the lead vehicle, weapon trained on the group. His voice was steady, controlled. Lower your weapons. Release the hostage. The lead role player shouted back. You leave or he dies. Mara crouched in the tree line 30 feet away, watching through binoculars. Torrance was beside her, radio in hand. Cross didn't hesitate. I'm giving you 10 seconds. You don't have authority here. 10, 9, 8. The role players shifted, uncertain. The scenario wasn't scripted beyond this point. Cross was improvising. 7, 6. One of Cross's team members called out, "Gunny, maybe we should—" 5, 4. The role player holding the hostage tightened his grip. "I'll do it." 3, 2. Cross fired. Blank rounds, but the muzzle flash was real. The sound cracked through the forest. The role player dropped, simulating a kill. The others scattered. Cross's voice over the radio. "Hostage secured. Move out." The convoy pushed through. Torrance keyed his mic. "Index." The vehicle stopped. The role player stood, brushing off dirt. The hostage sat up, rubbing his shoulder where he'd hit the ground. Cross climbed down, face hard. Torrance approached. "Explain." "Negotiation wasn't an option. They weren't going to let him go. I made the call." "And if you'd missed?" "I didn't." "But if you had? In real life, with live rounds, what happens?" Cross's jaw worked. "Hostage dies. I take responsibility." "You killed 3 civilians to save 1 asset. They weren't civilians. They were armed combatants using a hostage as leverage." "How do you know?" "Because real civilians don't operate like that." Torrance stared at him. "You made a judgment call based on experience. It worked. This time. But you just set a precedent that you're willing to escalate to lethal force without exhausting alternatives." Cross met his eyes. "In the field, hesitation gets people killed. So does recklessness." They stood there, locked in silent evaluation. Mara stepped forward. Both men turned. "He's right," she said quietly. Torrance frowned. "Excuse me?" "He's right. In that scenario, negotiation buys you nothing but time, and time costs lives." She looked at Cross. "You read the situation, assessed the risk, made the call. That's leadership." Cross nodded once, didn't smile, didn't need to. Torrance exhaled. "Noted, but you're still walking a line, Gunny. Don't forget which side you're on." "Roger that, sir." The team mounted up and drove back to base. Mara and Torrance walked through the forest in silence. Rain had started, light, cold, turning the ground slick. "You think I'm wrong?" Torrance asked. "No, you're testing him, seeing if he'll defend his call or fold. He didn't fold. Neither did you." Mara glanced at him. "I've been Cross. I've made those calls. Some of them still keep me up at night." Torrance stopped walking. "Black Dune?" She didn't answer immediately. Rain dripped through the canopy, tapping against her jacket. "We had a convoy, 3 vehicles. Got hit outside a village we weren't supposed to be near. Lost comms, no air support. One of ours went down, IED, driver killed instantly. The rest of us were pinned." "What did you do?" "We had 2 choices. Stay and fight, probably die, or leave the body and move." "Which did you choose?" Mara's eyes were distant. "We stayed. Lost 2 more before extraction finally came. The right call would have been to leave, but we couldn't." "Why not?" "Because we weren't just soldiers. We were family." She looked at Torrance. "You can't train that. You can't test it. You either have it or you don't." Torrance absorbed that, nodded slowly. "Team 3 goes tomorrow. Ashford's group. I want you on the ground for that one too." "Why?" "Because I think she's going to break, and I want someone there who knows how to put people back together." Team 3's scenario started at dawn. The sky was bruised purple, clouds heavy with rain that hadn't fallen. The convoy rolled out at 0530, headlights cutting through pre-dawn darkness. Ashford sat in the lead vehicle, radio in hand, voice tight. "All units maintain speed, stay alert." Her team was quieter than the others, less confident, the kind of quiet that came from uncertainty, not discipline. Mara rode in the trail vehicle, watching. Torrance was back at base, monitoring via drone feed and radio. The route took them through swamp terrain, standing water, cypress trees, roads that were barely roads. Visibility was poor. The air smelled like rot and wet earth. Ashford's voice. "Vehicle 2, close up your interval." "Roger." They were moving too slow, bunching up, classic mistakes. And then the road disappeared. The lead vehicle hit a washout, mud and water where asphalt should have been. The HMMWV lurched, front end dropping, engine roaring as the wheels spun uselessly. Ashford, stop, stop, we're stuck. The convoy halted. Role players emerged from the tree line, not firing, just watching. Psychological pressure as Ashford climbed out, boots sinking into mud. We need to winch it out. Her team scrambled, pulling gear, attaching lines. But the mud was deep. The vehicle wasn't moving. 5 minutes passed. 10. The role players started advancing, slowly, deliberately. Ashford saw them. Her voice cracked over the radio. Contact front, weapons up. But her team was disorganized. Half were working the winch, half were trying to set security. No one was doing either well. Mara keyed her radio. Torrance, she's losing it. I see it. Give her another minute. The role players were 50 feet away now. 40. Ashford, we need to... Someone! Get that vehicle out! 30 feet. Mara climbed out of her vehicle, walked forward, calm, steady. Ashford saw her. What are you doing? Mara didn't answer. She walked past the stuck vehicle, directly toward the advancing role players. They stopped. She stopped. Silence. Then Mara spoke. Not loud, but carrying. You're not going to shoot. You're going to wait. The lead role player blinked. You're role players. This is a test. And right now you're testing her. Mara pointed back at Ashford. But she doesn't need pressure. She needs clarity. She turned, walked back to the convoy. Ashford stared at her. What are you... Forget the vehicle, Mara said. You're stuck. Accept it. Redistribute the personnel and gear to the other vehicles and move. But no buts. You're in a kill zone. You have 20 seconds to make a call. What's it going to be? Ashford's face went pale. Her mouth opened, closed. 15 seconds. Mara waited. 10 seconds. Ashford's voice came out shaky but clear. All personnel, abandon Vehicle 1. Redistribute to 2 and 3. Move now. The team scrambled. Fast. Efficient. Within 90 seconds, everyone was mounted. Ashford climbed into Vehicle 2. Keyed the radio. All units, push forward. The convoy moved. The role players watched them go. Mara stood in the mud beside the abandoned HMMWV, rain starting to fall. Torrance's voice crackled in her ear. That wasn't protocol. No, but it worked. You just did her job for her. I showed her what decision looked like. Whether she learns from it is up to her. Silence on the radio. Then, get back to base. We need to debrief. Mara climbed into the trail vehicle and rode back through rain that turned the windshield into a waterfall. The debriefing happened that night in a room that smelled like wet gear and exhaustion. All 12 candidates sat in folding chairs, faces showing varying degrees of defeat. Torrance stood at the front, arms crossed. You all failed, he said, some worse than others. But failure isn't the point. The point is what you do next. He walked between the rows. Captain Nguyen, you stopped in a kill zone because you couldn't leave a man behind. Noble. Stupid. You're dead. Nguyen nodded, jaw tight. Gunnery Sergeant Cross, you shot first and asked questions later. Effective. Dangerous. You created more problems than you solved. Cross didn't react. Ashford, you froze. Your team almost got wiped out because you couldn't make a decision. Ashford's eyes were red. She didn't look up. Torrance stopped. But here's the thing. All of you are still here. That means you're willing to learn. The question is whether you're willing to admit you don't know everything. He looked at Mara standing in the back. Some of you have experience, some of you have training, but experience without humility is just arrogance, and arrogance gets people killed. He dismissed them. They filed out in silence. Ashford lingered, walked up to Mara. Thank you. Mara met her eyes. Don't thank me. Learn from it. I will. Good. Ashford left. Torrance approached. You made an impression. That wasn't the goal. What was? Keeping her from breaking permanently. Torrance nodded. You did. But now she's going to lean on you. They all are. Be ready for that. Mara looked at the empty room. I know. Outside, rain hammered the roof. Thunder rolled in the distance. Somewhere in the darkness, 12 people were rethinking everything they thought they knew. And Mara stood in the quiet, feeling the weight of expectations she never asked for but couldn't ignore, because some legacies weren't written in files or records. They were written in the people who survived long enough to pass them on. The rain didn't stop. It settled into a steady rhythm that turned the training grounds into a landscape of mud and standing water, the kind of weather that made everything harder and nothing easier. Mara stood outside the barracks at 0400 on November 16th, coffee in hand, watching the sky refuse to lighten. The candidates had another day ahead of them. More scenarios, more pressure, more opportunities to fail in ways that revealed who they really were. She'd barely slept. The cot in the temporary quarters was fine. She'd slept on worse, but her mind wouldn't shut down. Kept cycling through the exercise, through Ashford's frozen face, through Cross's cold efficiency, through Nguyen's desperate attempt to save everyone, through the choices she'd made in places like Black Dune when the weight of lives sat heavier than any gear. Footsteps approached through the rain, Torrance, already dressed, already moving with purpose. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." "Yeah, me neither." He stood beside her, looking out at the dark training grounds. "Klein called last night, wanted an update." "What'd you tell him?" "That you're exactly what he said you were, and that half these candidates wouldn't have made it through day 2 without you." Mara sipped her coffee, said nothing. "He also said something else," Torrance continued. "Said you've been out of the game for over a decade, that you didn't want to come back." "I didn't." "So why did you?" Mara was quiet for a long moment. Rain drummed on the metal roof of the barracks. Somewhere in the distance, a generator coughed to life. "Because people like Brennan exist," she said finally. "People who look at a worn uniform and think it means weakness, who assume silence means nothing to say." She turned to face him. "Someone needs to remind them they're wrong." Torrance nodded slowly. "Today's scenario is the hardest one. Total breakdown. No comms, no resupply. Casualties mounting. They're going to have to make calls that have no right answer." "Sounds familiar. I want you to run it." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Run it how?" "You're the convoy commander. They're your team. You make the calls. They follow or they don't. And we see what happens." "That's not observing. That's participating." "I know." Torrance met her gaze. "But I think they need to see what real leadership looks like. Not theory, not classroom bullshit, the actual thing." Mara set her coffee down on a railing. "And if I make the wrong call?" "Then you make the wrong call. That's the point. They need to see that even experience doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It just teaches you how to move through it." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're asking me to expose things I don't talk about. I'm asking you to teach." The rain fell. The sky stayed dark. "All right," Mara said. "I'll do it." The briefing at 600 was different. No Torrance at the front, just Mara, standing in front of 12 tired, wary faces. She didn't introduce herself, didn't explain, just started talking. "Today's scenario is simple. You're a convoy that's been hit, hard. Comms are down. Resupply isn't coming. You've got casualties, limited ammo, and hostile forces closing in. Your objective is to reach an extraction point 15 kilometers away through contested terrain. You have 6 hours. Nguyen raised his hand. "Who's in command?" "I am." Mara's voice was flat, final. "You follow my orders or you fail. Clear?" Silence. Then nods. "Good. We roll out in 30 minutes. Gear up." They moved, fast. The air in the room had changed, less uncertainty, more urgency. Cross approached as the others filed out. "You really run convoys under fire?" "Yeah." "Where?" "Places that officially don't exist." He studied her. "I did 2 tours in Afghanistan. Saw some bad shit. But I always had air support, always had exfil." "You're saying you didn't?" "Not always." "How'd you survive?" Mara looked at him. "By making calls I'm still not sure we're right." Cross nodded once. Didn't ask anything else, just walked out. Ashford lingered near the door, face pale but determined. "I won't freeze today." "Good, because if you do, people die. Even in training, that matters." "I know." "Do you?" Mara stepped closer. Yesterday you hesitated because you were afraid of being wrong. Today you need to be afraid of doing nothing. Fear isn't the enemy. Paralysis is. Ashford swallowed. Understood. We'll see. The convoy rolled out at 6:45 under skies that threatened worse weather. 3 HMMWVs, 12 candidates, and Mara in the lead vehicle's passenger seat. The route took them into the deepest part of the training area, dense forest, narrow roads, terrain that swallowed sound and visibility. Mara keyed the radio. All units maintain interval. Weapons tight unless I give the word. We move fast and quiet. The convoy pushed forward. Rain turned the road to slick mud. The vehicles struggled for traction, engines growling. 15 minutes in, the first explosion hit. Not real. A simulated IED, pyrotechnics and smoke that erupted beneath Vehicle 2's front wheel. The HMMWV lurched sideways, tires shredded, front axle collapsed. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. Stop! All units, stop! The convoy halted. Gunfire erupted from the tree line, blanks, but the sound was deafening. Contact left. Suppress and establish security. Mara climbed out, moving low, scanning the forest. The role players were dug in, firing from concealment. Cross was already returning fire from his turret position. Nguyen was trying to organize his team. Ashford looked frozen again, then shook herself and started directing her people. Mara keyed the radio. Vehicle 2, status. Axles broken. We're not moving. Casualties? 2 simulated wounded. Ambulatory. Mara processed. Vehicle down. Wounded. Hostile fire. Classic decision point. She moved to Vehicle 2. The driver and gunner were still inside, faces tight with adrenaline. 2 candidates sat in the back, orange vests marking them as simulated casualties. Can you walk? She asked the wounded. Yes, ma'am. Then get out and move to Vehicle 3. Everyone else, redistribute gear and mount up. We're leaving this one. Nguyen appeared beside her. We're abandoning it? We don't have a choice. It's dead weight. But what, Captain? You want to stay here and fix it while they flank us? She pointed at the tree line where muzzle flashes continued. Make a call, now. Nguyen's face went pale, but he nodded. Copy. Moving personnel now. The team worked fast. 90 seconds later, everyone was mounted in the remaining 2 vehicles. Mara. All units push through. Speed is security. Go. The convoy surged forward, engines roaring, gunfire fading behind them. They drove for 10 minutes before the second hit came. A roadblock. Logs and debris across the narrow road, role players positioned behind cover. The convoy stopped. Mara climbed out, walked forward, calm, deliberate. The lead role player stepped out from behind the barricade. Road's closed. Turn around. Not an option. Then you're stuck. Mara looked at the roadblock, at the terrain on either side, dense forest, impassable for vehicles, at the role players watching with simulated weapons. She turned back to her team. Ashford, you've got demolitions training, right? Ashford blinked. Basic, yeah. How long to clear that roadblock? If I had charges? 5 minutes. You don't have charges. Improvise. Ashford stared. With what? Whatever you've got. Winch cables, tools, manpower. Figure it out. Ashford hesitated, then nodded. On it. She rallied her team. They moved to the roadblock, assessing, planning. The role players watched, but didn't interfere. This wasn't their script. Cross appeared at Mara's shoulder. They're going to flank us while we're stopped. I know. So why are we stopping? Because running isn't always an option. Sometimes you have to go through. Cross grunted. That's how you get killed. Sometimes. But sometimes it's how you survive. Ashford's team worked the roadblock, using winch cables from the vehicles to pull logs aside, brute forcing the debris with coordinated effort. It wasn't elegant, but it was working. 4 minutes in, gunfire erupted from the flanks. Role players closing in from both sides, simulating a coordinated attack. Mara. Cross. Suppress left. Nguyen. Take right. Ashford, keep working. We're almost through. The candidates moved, returned fire, held the line. Ashford's voice, strained but steady. Roadblocks clear. Mount up. Go, go, go. The convoy pushed through the gap, tires churning mud, engines screaming. Role players fell back, their part played. The road opened ahead. Clear. For now. Mara keyed the radio. All units, good work. Keep moving. But her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from memory. Black Dune had felt like this. The same pressure, the same impossible choices, the same knowledge that one wrong call could end everything. She forced her breathing steady, focused forward. The extraction point was still 8 kilometers away, and the worst was yet to come. It came 20 minutes later. The convoy reached a river crossing, a bridge that should have been there but wasn't. Washed out, destroyed, reduced to twisted metal and broken concrete jutting from fast-moving water. Mara climbed out, stared at the river, at the opposite bank 50 feet away. No bridge, no ford, no easy answer. Torrance's voice crackled over the radio. He'd been silent until now, observing. Velasquez, you've got 1 hour until hostile forces overrun your position. What's your call? Mara didn't answer immediately. She walked to the water's edge. The current was strong, murky with sediment. The vehicles wouldn't make it across, not without getting stuck or swept downstream. The candidates gathered around her, waiting. Ashford spoke first. We could winch across. Anchor one vehicle on this side, pull the others over one at a time. Cross shook his head. Too slow. And if the cable snaps, we lose everything. Guayen, what about walking across? Leave the vehicles, carry essential gear, move on foot? Mara turned to him. And when we reach the other side, 15 kilometers from extraction with no transport and hostile forces closing in? Nguyen fell silent. She looked at all of them, 12 faces, 12 people waiting for her to have the answer, but she didn't. Not a clean one, not one that didn't cost something. She keyed the radio. Torrance, I need intel. Is there another crossing point within range? Static. Then, negative. This is your only option. And if we can't cross, then you're dead. Mara's jaw tightened. She looked back at the river, at the candidates, at the impossible equation in front of her. Then she made the call. We cross on foot, strip the vehicles down to essential gear, weapons, ammo, medical supplies, comms. Everything else stays. We move in pairs, roped together for safety, fast and controlled. Cross frowned. That's a risk. If someone goes under, then their partner pulls them out. That's why we're roped. Mara's voice was hard. We don't have time to debate. Start prepping gear. We move in 10 minutes. They hesitated, then moved. Gear was pulled from the vehicles. Rope was distributed. The candidates paired off, tying themselves together at the waist. Ashford approached Mara. You're crossing first? Yeah. Alone? Someone has to anchor the line on the other side. That's... Ashford stopped. That's dangerous. Most things worth doing are. Mara tied a rope around her waist, secured it to a tree on the near bank. When I get across, I'll signal. Then you start sending people. What if you don't make it? Mara met her eyes. Then you find another way. She stepped into the water. The cold hit like a fist. The current pulled immediately, strong and indifferent. Mara leaned into it, angling upstream, using the rope as a guide. The riverbed was uneven, rocks and mud and sudden drops. Her boots slipped. She caught herself, kept moving. Halfway across, the current surged. Her foot lost purchase. She went under. Cold, dark, pressure. She kicked, hard, broke the surface, gasped air, grabbed the rope, pulled, hand over hand, slow, exhausting. She reached the opposite bank and hauled herself out, water streaming from her clothes, lungs burning. She waved. The candidates started crossing, pairs, steady, supporting each other when the current surged. One slipped. His partner held him. They made it across, Nguyen and his partner, Cross and his. Ashford, paired with a younger candidate, white-knuckled but moving. 12 people. 15 minutes. All across. Mara collapsed on the bank, breathing hard. Torrance's voice. Impressive. Now you've got 45 minutes to reach extraction on foot. Move. Mara stood, dripping, exhausted, but moving. Form up. 2 columns. We move fast. Stay together. Go. They went. The forest was different on this side, denser, darker, the canopy blocking what little light the overcast sky provided. The ground was uneven, roots and rocks making every step a potential hazard. Mara led. The candidates followed, spread in a tactical column, weapons ready. Her clothes clung to her, cold and heavy. Her shoulder ached, the old injury flaring with every movement. But she didn't slow. 20 minutes in, Cross moved up beside her. "You okay?" "Fine." "You don't look fine." "I'm moving. That's all that matters." He was quiet for a moment. "Black Dune. Was it like this?" Mara didn't answer immediately, kept walking. Then, worse. We didn't have role players. We had real bullets, real casualties, real fear that if we stopped, we weren't starting again. "How many times did you do it?" "Do what?" "Lead people through impossible situations." Mara's jaw tightened. "Too many." "And they all made it?" She stopped walking, turned to face him. "No, they didn't." Cross met her eyes, nodded slowly. "I figured. Does that change your opinion of me?" "No. Makes me respect you more." Mara turned and kept walking. The extraction point appeared ahead, a clearing marked with orange smoke, a landing zone for simulated helicopters that would never actually come. The candidates reached it with 10 minutes to spare, exhausted, soaked, but there. Torrance's voice crackled over the radio. "Index, exercise complete." The candidates collapsed, some sitting, some on their backs in the mud, breathing hard, silent. Mara stood at the edge of the clearing, looking back the way they'd come, at the forest that had tested them, at the river they'd crossed, at the choices that had brought them here. Torrance approached from a trail vehicle that had been waiting. He looked at Mara, then at the candidates. "Well done," he said quietly. Mara didn't respond. He walked to the group. "You all just did something most people can't. You adapted. You supported each other. You followed someone who didn't give you easy answers, because there weren't any." He looked at Mara. "And you led them through it." She met his gaze. "They did the work. Because you showed them how." The candidates were listening now, watching. Torrance turned back to them. "Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about making the best call you can with the information you have, and living with the consequences. Some of you hesitated today. Some of you pushed too hard. But all of you finished. That's what matters." He gestured to Mara. "This woman ran operations most of you will never read about, in places you'll never see, under conditions that would have broken most people. She doesn't talk about it because talking doesn't help, but showing you does. Remember that." Silence. Heavy, respectful. Nguyen stood, walked to Mara, extended his hand. "Thank you." She took it. "You did good today. I almost got us killed yesterday. But you learned from it. That's the difference between a mistake and a failure." One by one, the others approached. Cross. Ashford. The rest. Shaking her hand, offering quiet thanks. Mara accepted them without ceremony, without pride. Just acknowledgement. When they were done, Torrance pulled her aside. "Klein was right. You're exactly what we needed. I just did what you asked." "No. You did more than that. You gave them something to measure themselves against." Mara looked at the clearing, at the candidates loading into vehicles for the ride back. "They're going to be fine. Most of them. And the ones who aren't? They'll figure it out, or they won't. That's not on me." Torrance smiled slightly. "You really don't want credit, do you?" "Credit doesn't bring people back." The smile faded. "No, it doesn't." They stood in silence as the vehicles rolled out, engines fading into the distance. Rain started again, light, persistent. "There's a debrief tonight," Torrance said. "Senior staff, they'll want to talk to you." "About what?" "About consulting on future exercises. Maybe more." Mara shook her head. "I'm not looking for a career." "I know, but sometimes the job finds you anyway." She didn't respond. They walked back through the rain. The forest closed around them, dark and indifferent. And Mara thought about Black Dune, about the people who didn't make it, about the weight of choices that never got lighter, only more familiar. about whether teaching others to carry that weight was enough to balance the scales. She didn't know, but she kept walking anyway. The debrief happened at 1900 hours in a room that smelled like coffee and wet gear. Senior staff filled the chairs, colonels, lieutenant colonels, civilian contractors with decades of experience. Klein sat at the head of the table, expression unreadable. Mara stood at the front, still in her damp uniform, too tired to care how she looked. Klein spoke first. Major Torrance's report says you took over command of today's exercise and led 12 candidates through a scenario designed to have no clean solution. Is that accurate? Yes, sir. And they all reached extraction? They did. A colonel near the back, name tag read Marsh, leaned forward. That scenario's designed to force a choice, abandon people or risk everyone. You chose neither. How? Mara met his eyes. I chose both. We left equipment behind. We took calculated risks crossing the river. We prioritized speed over security. Every call had a cost. We just paid it incrementally instead of all at once. Marsh frowned. That's not doctrine. No, sir. It's not. Then where'd you learn it? In places where doctrine got people killed. The room went quiet. Klein's expression shifted, something almost like approval. Echo 519. Yes, sir. Another officer, a Navy captain named Reeves, spoke up. Echo 519's operations are still classified. What can you tell us about their methodology? Nothing specific, but the principles are simple. Adapt faster than the enemy. Make decisions with incomplete information, except that some losses are inevitable and focus on minimizing them. Sounds like gambling, Reeves said. It is. But so is everything else. The difference is being honest about the odds. Klein stood. Velasquez, we're developing a new training program for joint logistics operations under asymmetric conditions. We need someone with real-world experience to design the curriculum. Interested? Mara hesitated. I'm a consultant, sir, not an instructor. You were an instructor today, and you were damn good at it. One day doesn't make a career. No, but it's a start. Klein's voice softened slightly. We need people who've been there, who understand that training isn't about creating robots. It's about preparing people to think when the plan falls apart. You know how to do that. Mara looked at the faces around the table, expectant, waiting. She thought about Ashford, about Nguyen, about Cross, about whether walking away meant letting them fail later when someone who actually knew better could have prepared them. I'll think about it, she said finally. Klein nodded. That's all I'm asking. The meeting adjourned. People filed out, some stopping to shake Mara's hand, others just nodding respect. Torrance waited until the room cleared. You're going to say yes. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because you already know what happens if you don't. Mara looked at him. What's that? Someone else does it. And they don't have the experience to do it right, and people suffer for it. She was quiet for a long moment. That's manipulative. That's true. Mara almost smiled. Almost. I'll let you know, she said. Good enough. She walked out into the night. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing, stars beginning to show through gaps in the clouds. Her truck was parked near the barracks. She climbed in, sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. Miss Velasquez, this is Captain Nguyen. I just wanted to say thank you again. What you showed us today. I'll carry that with me, wherever I go. Nguyen. Another buzz. Different number. Ashford here. I didn't freeze today because you showed me what decision looks like. I won't forget. Thank you. Another Cross. You were right about Black Dune. Experience doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it teaches you how to move through it. Respect. Mara stared at the messages. Then she set the phone down and started the engine. The road ahead was dark, empty. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't driving away from something. She was driving toward it, whatever that meant, wherever it led. She'd figure it out, the same way she always had, one decision at a time. The drive back to Albuquerque took 14 hours. Mara stopped twice, once for gas and bad coffee, once to sleep for 3 hours in a rest stop parking lot under sodium lights that turned everything orange. She crossed state lines in silence, radio off, windows cracked just enough to let the desert air sweep through. The messages from Nguyen, Ashford, and Cross sat unread on her phone. She'd look at them later. Maybe. Right now she needed the quiet, needed the distance between Fort Lejeune and whatever came next. The sun was setting when she pulled into her apartment complex, the sky going purple and gold over the Sandia Mountains. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, unlocked her door, dropped her duffel just inside. The apartment looked exactly as she'd left it. Sparse, clean, temporary. She showered, hot water until it ran cold, changed into clean clothes, made coffee that tasted better than it had any right to. Then she sat at the small desk by the window and finally opened her phone. The messages were still there. Nguyen, Ashford, Cross. She read them again, slower this time, letting the words settle. Another message had come in while she was driving. From Klein. Velasquez. No pressure, but if you're interested in the training position, I need an answer by end of week. We start building the program in December. You'd be essential. Think about it. Kleinmara set the phone down, looked out the window at the city lights beginning to glow in the dusk. Essential. She'd been essential before, in places where essential meant expendable if things went wrong, where essential meant carrying weight no one else could see. But this was different. This was teaching, passing on something that had cost too much to learn alone. She thought about Ashford's face when she'd frozen at the washout, about Nguyen stopping in the kill zone because he couldn't leave anyone behind, about Cross making the hard call and defending it, about 12 people who'd walked away from that exercise different than when they'd started. Her phone buzzed again. Different number. She didn't recognize it. Ms. Velasquez, this is Lieutenant Brennan from Redstone Supply. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted to apologize again. What I did was wrong. I've been counseled and I'm working to be better. I just wanted you to know that. I'm sorry. Mara stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, apology accepted. Do better. She hit send. The phone buzzed immediately. I will. Thank you. She set it down and walked to the closet, pulled out the wooden box from the nightstand, the one she never opened. Sat on the edge of the bed with it in her lap. The wood was smooth, worn at the corners from years of handling. No label, no markings, just a simple box with a brass clasp. She opened it. Inside, a folded flag, a set of dog tags that weren't hers, a photograph, edges worn, showing 5 people in desert fatigues, standing in front of a vehicle that had seen better days. Faces she hadn't looked at in years but never forgot. Echo 519, Black Dune, 2009. 3 of the people in that photo hadn't made it home. She touched the edge of the photograph. Let the memory surface, the heat, the dust, the sound of rounds impacting, the weight of decisions made in seconds that lasted lifetimes. They'd trusted her, followed her, died anyway. Not because she'd made the wrong call. Sometimes there was no right call. Sometimes you just chose the option that killed the fewest people and lived with it. She closed the box, set it back on the nightstand. Then she picked up her phone and called Klein. He answered on the second ring. Velasquez. I'm in. A pause. Then, good. That's real good. When can you start? December 1st. I need a few weeks to settle things here. Done. I'll have contracts sent over by Monday. Welcome aboard. One condition. Name it. I run the program my way. No interference. No doctrine that doesn't work. If something's broken, I fix it. If someone objects, they can take it up with me directly. Klein laughed. Short, genuine. I wouldn't have it any other way. Anything else? Yeah. I want Torrance as co-developer. He understands what we're building. I'll make it happen. Anything else? Mara looked at the wooden box on the nightstand. No, sir. That's it. Then I'll see you in December. And Velasquez? Sir? Thank you for saying yes. The line went dead. Mara set the phone down and sat in the quiet of her apartment, feeling something shift in her chest. Not relief, not excitement, just rightness. Like a piece that had been out of place for years had finally clicked into position. She stood, walked to the window. The city stretched below, lights multiplying as night settled in. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from Torrance. Heard you said yes. Good. We've got work to do. See you in December. She smiled, just slightly. Typed back, Roger that. 3 weeks later, Mara stood in front of a different building on a different base. Fort Benning, Georgia. The new home of the Advanced Logistics Training Program, a name that sounded bureaucratic but meant something real. It was early December. The air was cold and damp, nothing like the desert. The trees here still had leaves, brown and stubborn, refusing to fall. Torrance walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. Ready? As I'll ever be. They walked inside together. The building was newer than Redstone, cleaner than Lejeune. Conference rooms, classrooms, a simulation center that smelled like fresh paint and electronics. A dozen officers and contractors were already waiting, the team that would build this thing from the ground up. Klein stood at the front, arms crossed, watching them enter. Velasquez. Torrance. Good to see you. Mara nodded. Torrance shook his hand. Klein gestured to the room. This is your team. Most of them have combat experience. All of them have training backgrounds. But none of them have run operations like Echo 519. That's why you're here. He turned to the assembled group. For those who don't know, Mara Velasquez ran covert logistics operations in some of the most hostile environments on the planet. She doesn't talk about it because it's still classified, but what she learned is exactly what we need to teach. Eyes turned to Mara, evaluating, curious, respectful. She stepped forward, didn't smile, didn't soften it, just spoke. Most of you have been through training programs. You know the structure. Classroom, field exercises, evaluations. This isn't that. This is about teaching people to think when everything falls apart, when the plan is gone, when comms are down and help isn't coming, when the only thing between survival and catastrophe is the decision you make in the next 10 seconds. She paused. Let that settle. We're going to build scenarios that have no clean answers. We're going to put people under pressure they've never felt, and we're going to watch them break, because some of them will. But the ones who don't, they'll be ready for the real thing, and that's worth more than any certificate or commendation. A colonel in the back raised his hand. How do we measure success if there's no right answer? We measure it by whether they keep moving, whether they adapt, whether they support their team or fall apart. Mara met his eyes. Success isn't getting it right. It's not giving up when you get it wrong. The colonel nodded slowly. Another voice, a Navy commander named Torres. What about doctrine? We can't just ignore established procedures. We're not ignoring them. We're teaching when to follow them and when to throw them out. Doctrine is a tool. But if you treat it like gospel, you die when the situation doesn't match the manual. Torres frowned but didn't argue. Klein stepped forward again. Velasquez and Torrance have full authority to design this program. If you have concerns, bring them up. But understand, this is their vision. We're here to support it, not water it down. The room absorbed that. Klein looked at Mara. Anything else you want to say? She thought for a moment, then, yeah. This isn't about making people fearless. Fear is useful. It keeps you sharp. This is about teaching people to function through fear, to make calls when they're terrified, to lead when everything inside them is screaming to run. She paused. Because that's what real leadership is, not confidence, commitment, even when you're not sure. Silence. Then Torrance spoke. We start scenario development next week. If you're in, be ready to work. If you're not, leave now. No one moved. Good, Klein said. Let's get to it. The meeting broke. People clustered in small groups, talking, planning. Mara walked to the window, looking out at the training grounds beyond. Torrance joined her. You did good in there. I just told them the truth. That's what they needed to hear. She was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about the people who didn't make it, the ones who trusted me and died anyway. You think this balances it? No, nothing balances it. She looked at him. But maybe it means their deaths taught something. Maybe the people we train here won't make the same mistakes. Maybe they'll survive because of what we learned. Torrance nodded. That's as good a reason as any. But the first training cycle launched in March. 24 candidates from all branches, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and civilian contractors. They arrived expecting a standard logistics course and got something else entirely. Mara stood in the observation room on day one, watching them process in. Young faces. Confident faces. Faces that hadn't been tested yet. Torrance was running the initial brief. His voice came through the speakers. Welcome to Advanced Logistics Training. For the next 8 weeks, you're going to face scenarios designed to break you. Not physically, though it'll be hard, psychologically. We're going to put you in situations with no good options and watch what you do. A hand went up. Mara recognized the type immediately, someone who needed to challenge authority to feel secure. Why break us? Isn't the goal to build us up? Torrance didn't hesitate. You can't build on a weak foundation. We need to see what you're made of before we can teach you how to be better. If you break here, it's controlled. If you break in the field, people die. The hand went down. Mara watched the faces. Some showed fear, some showed determination. A few showed arrogance. Those were the ones who'd struggle most. The weeks unfolded in controlled chaos, scenarios that forced impossible choices. Convoys under fire, broken supply lines, casualty decisions, ethical ambiguity. Some candidates thrived. Some crumbled. Some surprised everyone. Mara walked through it all, observing, advising, occasionally stepping in when someone needed guidance. Not answers, guidance. A question that made them think. A challenge that forced growth. In week 5, a candidate named Corporal Martinez froze during an ambush scenario, completely locked up, unable to move or speak while his team struggled around him. After the exercise, he sat alone on a bench outside the simulation building, head in his hands. Mara approached, sat beside him, didn't say anything. Martinez finally spoke, voice raw. I failed. You froze. That's different. How? Failure is giving up. Freezing is a reaction. You can work through reactions. Martinez looked at her. How do you know? Because I've frozen too, more than once. His eyes widened. You? Yeah. Black Dune, 2009. We got hit outside a village. I couldn't move for about 10 seconds. Felt like hours. My team covered for me until I snapped out of it. What made you snap out? Realizing that if I didn't move, they'd die trying to protect me. Mara met his eyes. Fear is normal. Freezing is normal. What matters is whether you stay frozen or push through. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. What if I freeze again? Then you push through again, and again, until it becomes muscle memory. And if I can't, Mara stood, then you find another path. Not everyone's built for this. There's no shame in that, but you won't know until you try again. Martinez nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try again. Good. He returned to training the next day. Pushed through. Finished the program. Graduation happened in late April. 24 candidates started. 18 finished. The 6 who didn't weren't failures. They'd found other paths, other strengths. That was fine. The ceremony was small. No media, no fanfare. Just the graduates, the training staff, and a few senior officers. Klein gave a short speech about the importance of adaptability and leadership under pressure. Torrance handed out certificates. The graduates stood a little taller, moved a little differently than they had 8 weeks ago. Mara stood off to the side, watching. Martinez approached after the ceremony. I wanted to thank you for what you said. It made the difference. You made the difference. I just reminded you. He smiled, extended his hand. She took it. Where are you headed? She asked. Fort Hood, Logistics Battalion. They're deploying in 6 months. You'll do fine. I hope so. Hope's a start. Preparation's better. Keep training. I will. He hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever stop thinking about the people who didn't make it? Mara's expression didn't change. No, but you learn to carry it, and you use it to make sure the next group has a better chance. Martinez nodded. Thank you. He walked away. Torrance appeared at her shoulder. That's 6 cycles now, over 100 graduates. You've built something real here. We built it. You designed it. I just helped execute. Mara looked at the graduates mingling with their families. You think it's enough? Enough for what? To balance what we lost. Torrance was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I think the people in that photo you keep would be proud of what you're doing. Mara's throat tightened. She didn't respond. They stood in silence, watching the ceremony wind down. That evening, Mara sat in her office, a small space in the training building with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a window that looked out on the obstacle course. The wooden box sat on the corner of the desk now, not hidden, not opened often, just present. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Ms. Velasquez, this is Captain Nguyen. I just got promoted to Major. Wanted you to know. Your training made the difference. Thank you. Another buzz. Ashford. Finished my first real deployment. Used everything you taught us. We all made it home. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you anyway. Another, Cross. Running a training program at Camp Pendleton now, using your methods. They work. Respect. Mara read the messages, set the phone down, looked at the wooden box, opened it. The photograph stared back. 5 faces, 3 gone, 2 still out there somewhere carrying the same weight she did. I'm trying, she said quietly. To the photo, to the memory, to herself. I'm trying to make it mean something. The faces didn't answer. They never did. But somehow, in the silence, she felt lighter. Not forgiven, not healed, but moving forward. She closed the box, stood, walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the training grounds. Candidates from the next cycle were running drills, voices carrying across the distance. Learning, growing, preparing for things they couldn't imagine yet. Mara watched them until the light faded and the grounds went quiet. Then she turned off the office light and walked out into the evening. The base was peaceful, streetlights flickering on, a few soldiers walking back to barracks, the hum of generators in the distance. She climbed into her truck. Newer now, reliable, but still just a vehicle. Started the engine. Drove through the gates and onto the highway. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty. But this time she wasn't running from anything. She was driving toward tomorrow, toward the next training cycle, toward the next group of people who needed to learn what she'd learned the hard way, toward a purpose that didn't erase the past, but gave it meaning. Her phone buzzed one last time, a message from Klein. Velasquez, Secretary of Defense just approved expansion of the program. We're going nationwide. You up for it? Mara smiled, just slightly. Typed back, send me the details. She set the phone down and kept driving. The miles accumulated in silence. The stars came out. And somewhere in the darkness, a woman who'd been dismissed, doubted, and overlooked became exactly who she was always meant to be. Not by demanding recognition, but by earning it through the quiet, relentless work of making others better. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with purpose. And that's enough. Never mistake silence for weakness. The quietest voices often carry the heaviest truths, and the people you underestimate may be the ones who change everything.